What is the best type? It's a question as old as Pokemon itself, and today I'll be giving my opinion on it. And yes, this is of course just an opinion, but not an uneducated or haphazard one. I'll be judging each type by a strict set of criteria. Let's get into that now. The first thing to establish is the metagame of assessment. I will be ranking these types in Scarlet and Violet Overused, the main format for competitive singles. I will consider how many meta-relevant Pokemon have that type and their usage. There are a ton of Steel types in OU, and they'll get credit for that. Since OU is the format of consideration, even formerly OU Ubers like Baxcalibur, Qianpao, and Iron Bundle won't be considered. Sorry, Ice types. The next criterion is pretty obvious. I will consider the basic properties of each type when ranking them, so basically what they're good and bad against offensively and defensively. Special attributes will also be considered, like Fire type's immunity to burn, Poison type's immunity to toxic and absorption of toxic spikes, and such. I will also consider how often the type is used as a Terra type. Fairy and Ghost, for example, are very common Terra types, and they'll get credit for that. I will also consider how effective and threatening offensive moves of that type are when used on Pokemon of that type. So Electric types will get credit for their Stab Volt Switch being amazing, Ice types will get credit for their Stab Freeze Dry being amazing, and such. Things like Ogerpon Wellspring Stab Ivy Cudgel will give Water types credit, but not much since only one Water type gets it. Types will also get credit for how often their moves are used on Pokemon of other types as coverage. This word, as coverage, is important here. When a Darkrai uses Ice Beam, it is using that for the purpose of coverage to hit stuff like Great Tusk and Ting Lu. When a Dragapult uses U-Turn, it's using that move to pivot, not for Bug-type coverage. When a Hatterene uses Nuzzle, it's not using it for Electric-type coverage, it just wants to paralyze the opponent. So Ice types will get credit for Darkrai using Ice Beam, but Bug types won't get credit for all the Pokemon using U-Turn, and Electric types won't get credit for how good Nuzzle Hatterene is. I also notably won't give any types credit for non-attacking moves of their type. So Rock types don't get credit for Stealth Rock, Ground types don't get credit for Spikes, Bug types don't get credit for Tail Glow, and Normal types don't get credit for Encore. Even obviously type-related attacking moves like Dragon Dance won't give dragons credit. If Dragon Dance suddenly became an Electric-type move for some reason, it would function exactly the same way, so it doesn't feel fair to give any types credit for these moves. So those are the factors I'm considering. I will be weighing these differently as well, so for example, the general defensive and offensive properties of a type will matter more than how many Pokemon use moves of that type as coverage. This weighting is just based on what I find most indicative of the actual success of that type. There's bound to be subjectivity in this process, but I've done my best to establish strict criteria and considerations to keep things consistent. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the actual ranking. Counting Stellar, there are 19 types total. Bug, Dark, Dragon, Electric, Fairy, Fighting, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Grass, Ground, Ice, Normal, Poison, Psychic, Rock, Steel, Water, and last, and also the least, Stellar. When considering the best type, there are a lot of things we can throw out quickly without much need for discussion. To do this, let's get the obvious out of the way and pick out a few types that are obviously top contenders. Steel has been considered the best type by some for more than 20 years, for its incredible defensive typing and insanely powerful dual typing combinations. Even after being nerfed in Generation 6, it remains one of the best. Fairy is another strong new type, single-handedly ruining the Dragon type. It has only two weaknesses, Steel and Poison, both of which are primarily defensive types, so often there is no good way to hit Fairies hard. It's also amazing offensively, with no immunities. Dark is another offensively incredible type, which is renowned for having extremely spammable moves like Knockoff and very powerful setup sweepers and breakers. So we can go down this list of types and ask ourselves, does this type really have a chance when we measure it against types like Steel, Fairy, and Dark? The first we can eliminate is Terra Stellar. This type is hardly real, and no Pokemon actually is Stellar type unless it uses Terra, and it's the worst Terra type by a lot. Its Terra Blast lowers your attacking stats, and it doesn't change your defensive typing, which is a major benefit of Terra. I won't be ranking my eliminations in any particular order until later, other than this, because it's just so obvious that Stellar is the worst type. Now just going through alphabetically, let's eliminate Bug. It's weak to Stealth Rock and the Rock type, Flying, and Fire. It has solid resists of Ground, Fighting, and Grass that make it decent defensive Terra type on a few Pokemon, but its offensive matchups are horrible. Bug is not very effective against Fighting, Flying, Poison, Ghost, Steel, Fire, and Fairy. That's 7 types, and some of them are top-tier defensive typings. Only one Bug type is an OU, Scizor, and that has the incredible secondary Steel type that goes so well with Bug. There are other meta-relevant Bug types, but not many. So yeah, Bug is out. I want to briefly address that there is no bad type. Bug types still do have some stuff going for them. First Impression is an amazing move, Stab U-Turn is extremely scary, and although it's banned this gen, Volcarona terrorized several generations with Sub-Swarm Bug Buzz. It's also one of my favorite types personally, but just because Bug has some stuff going for it doesn't mean it's a real contender for the best. I'm probably about to eliminate your favorite type, but I just want to clarify that it doesn't mean it's bad, just that it's not the best. Alright, with that out of the way, next on the chopping block is Dragon. Fairy and Steel are some of the best defensive types in the game, and they're super common. Fairy is immune to Dragon, and Steel resists it, which is terrible news for the Dragon type. Resisting Fire, Water, Grass, and Electric is still very nice, and Dragon's not a bad type, but ever since the introduction of Fairy, its offensive potential is less than a shadow of its former self. There are 5 Dragon types in OU, which is a decent amount. Kyurem, Dragapult, Dragonite, Walking Wake, and Raging Bolt are very solid Pokemon, but other than Draco Meteor, few of them actually use Dragon Stab, mostly relying on their secondary typings and coverage moves. Terra Dragon is basically not a thing unless a Pokemon wants to get a crazy stab Draco Meteor, or it's specifically trying to counter Ogerpon Wellspring, but even then Terra Grass is usually better. Generally, Dragon isn't a terrible type by any means, and many of them have really amazing stats, but having such a bad matchup into Fairy eliminates any real shot at Dragon being considered the best. Speaking of mid-types, next to eliminate is Fighting. Despite some of the undisputed top tiers in Gen 9 being fighting types, like Zamazenta, Great Tusk, and Iron Valiant, that's about all this type has going for it. Its main defensive utility is resisting Dark, which is great given how Dark is as an offensive type, but the other 2 resists, Rock and Bug, aren't hugely important. It has a rough matchup into Fairy, being both not very effective against Fairy and being weak to Fairy moves. Ghost, another top type, is immune to Fighting, which is also not ideal. Almost every team also has at least one Flying type, adding more obstacles for offensive fighting types. Terra Fighting is used on a few Pokemon that struggle against Dark types, but it certainly isn't common as a Terra type. The dominant matchup into Dark makes Fighting type solid for sure, but the horrible matchup into Fairy and Flying disqualifies Fighting for any real consideration as the best. The next to eliminate is Grass. This one is pretty obvious. Just like the Bug type, Grass is not very effective against 7 types: Flying, Poison, Bug, Fire, Grass, Dragon, and Steel. It's weak to 5 types as well, and resists only 4. 3 of those 4 resists are great ones: Ground, Water, and Electric, the less meaningful one being Grass resisting itself, but that still makes Grass a decent defensive type. Still, decent defensive type and horrible offensive type is basically the same deal as Bug. Despite how good Rillaboom and Ogerpon Wellspring are, and the decent defensive utility of Terra Grass, the raw properties of the Grass type are too terrible to ignore. It's definitely not the best. Next, let's get rid of Ice types. Ice is an amazing offensive type, no one would contest this. It's resisted only by Water, Ice, Steel, and Fire. Due to how common Freeze Dry is, though, which hits Water types super effectively despite being an Ice move, Water isn't a real Ice resist most of the time. On top of that, Ice types are so rare that Ice isn't much of a real Ice resist to worry about either. So Ice types generally only have to worry about Steel and Fire. Ice hits Flying, Ground, Grass, and Dragon super effectively, which is also amazing since all of those types except Grass are extremely common. The problem is that Ice is garbage defensively. It resists only itself, and it's weak to Fighting, Rock, Fire, and worst of all, Steel. The Stealth Rock weakness is also a major deal. This utter lack of defensive utility makes Terra Ice unused except for some offensive Ice types wanting to boost their stab, and some electric types using Terra Blast Ice. It's a type that demands respect for its offensive power, but no type so defensively terrible could possibly be the best. Now let's eliminate normal types. The normal type doesn't have a lot going on. It's immune to Ghost, which is great, but Ghost is also immune to it. It's weak to fighting, and not very effective against steel and rock types. And that's it. That's the entire defensive and offensive profile of the normal type. The consistency is great for Pokemon with ridiculous stat distributions like Blissey, but for most Pokemon, such an absent type isn't a recipe for success. Blissey, Ursaluna, and Mousehold are the only meta-relevant normal types in OU, and none of them even get sufficient usage to be OU, at least at the time of making this video. Terra Normal is also pretty bad, only really used on teams that struggle with powerful choiced ghost types. It's a super cool and unique type, but definitely not the best. Can you guess what the next type we'll eliminate is? Probably not. But Psychic types know their time on this list is up. They have a truly tragic type matchup chart. Psychic is weak to Ghost and Dark, arguably the two best offensive types. They're also weak to Bug, which isn't a major offensive type for the most part, but U-turn is everywhere in singles. On the offensive side, Psychic types struggle as well, since Dark types are immune. Perhaps worst of all though, Steel, often considered the best defensive type in the game, resists Psychic. There are actually a few solid Psychic types in OU, Hatterene, Iron Crown, Deoxys Speed, and Galarian Slowking, but these Pokemon owe very little of their success to their Psychic typing. Almost nothing uses Terra Psychic, which makes a lot of sense when you look at its type matchups. Other than Stellar, I'd say this is probably the worst type in the game. Now for the last easy elimination we can make. It's Rock. Rock types, sadly, do not rock. Their best achievement is Stealth Rock, but as I said, I'm not considering non-attacking moves. With only 3 types resisting Rock, Fighting, Ground, and Steel, and being the best type against the most dual typings, Rock is theoretically the best offensive type. But this isn't true in reality. Ground and Steel types are extremely common, and they're often defensive Pokemon. The types it hits super effectively aren't amazing either. Flying is a very good super effective hit to have, but Bug, Ice, and Fire types generally aren't known for being difficult to kill anyway. Rock also has a long list of weaknesses: Fighting, Ground, Water, Grass, and Steel. Yikes, those are very common types. This poor defensive profile means that almost nothing uses Terra Rock, except Rock types looking to boost their stab moves. Glamora and Garganacl are the only rock types in OU, and Garganacl is a notorious Terra hog. In most games, it wants to turn into a water or fairy type and escape being a rock as soon as possible. The last nail in the coffin for Rock's consideration as the best is the fact that Rock moves are notoriously inaccurate. No other offensive types have to deal with all their stab moves being 80 or 90 accuracy, but for some reason, Rock types do. So those are the easy eliminations. We have 10 types remaining: Dark, Electric, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Ground, Poison, Steel, and Water. From here on out, I will eliminate these types in order of how good they are. Before we get into that though, if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. It helps out a lot. Now, these 10 are all solid types, but the first one to go wasn't a particularly hard call. It's Fire. Being super effective against Steel is amazing, and Fire types have a surprisingly impressive defensive profile as well, resisting itself, Bug, Grass, Steel, and very notably Ice and Fairy. Fire types have a lot of great offensive moves, and there are a lot of really solid Fire types in OU. Cinderace, Ceruledge, Heatran, Ironmoth, and Moltres are great Pokemon, and there are many more non-OU Fire types that are meta-relevant. Fire coverage is also often useful on non-Fire types, especially when combined with Fire's solid defensive resume. Terrafire is very excellent. Fire moves are also pretty great, both on the physical and special side. Moves like Flamethrower, Overheat, Flare Blitz, and Fire Punch allow Fire types a lot of customization on their sets. In the past, Fire types struggled a lot with Stealth Rock, and to some extent they still do, but heavy-duty boots have mitigated that weakness a lot. Still, that weakness definitely can't be entirely ignored. Fire types also have some pretty bad weaknesses, most notably Ground and Water. The terrible matchup into Water both offensively and defensively is a big part of why Fire is leaving our list here, since bulky Water types are everywhere. Fire types have had a major glow up in recent generations, but the water type and the stealth rock weakness is still holding them back from being the best. Next, we're eliminating the electric type. Electric types are pretty terrifying offensively, with amazing super effectives of water and flying. Electric types also have access to Volt Switch, the most powerful pivoting move in the game, and the only damaging pivoting move to not make contact. In singles, where pivoting is incredibly potent, this single move is what helped electric types get so far. Electric does have one big issue though: ground types. Ground is immune to electric and hits it super effectively. And unfortunately for electric types, ground types are everywhere. Because of how powerful Volt Switch is, basically every team will have a ground type. Some electric Pokemon have coverage like Grass Knot or Surf to work around this otherwise one-sided matchup, but many only have Terra to rely on to hit ground types. Zapdos and Raging Bolt, the only electric types in OU, don't have a great way to hit many of the tier's ground types. Ground is electric's only weakness, but boy is it a big one. If ground types got deleted tomorrow, electric is easily the best type in the game, but I don't think that's going to happen. Terra Electric is also basically non-existent, except for Pokemon that hate Zapdos or want to use Terra Blast Electric to kill birds like Moltres, Zapdos, and Corviknight. Not an awful Terra type, but not too common either. Electric is a solid type, but thanks to ground, there's no way it's the best. The next type to eliminate is Flying. Some may be surprised to see it this early, and I understand why. Thanks to how common and powerful ground types are, with all of them getting Earthquake, a flying type is almost mandatory on every team. Flying types are amazing defensively as well, only weak to Rock, Electric, Ice, while resisting Fighting, Bug, Grass, and most crucial of all, being immune to ground. As the only type immune to ground, this is incredible. As I said, ground types all have Earthquake, a non-contact 100 accuracy, 100 base power physical attack. Earthquake is only acceptable to exist in the game because Flying type exists. For this reason, Terra Flying is also a pretty solid Terra type. A lot of Pokemon appreciate being immune to ground and the other defensive privileges Flying types have. The main problem for Flying types is their offensive situation. With no types immune to Flying and only 3 resists, Steel, Electric, and Rock, Flying should be amazing offensively. But there are so few good offensive Flying moves. Hurricane needs rain support to hit more than 70% of the time, Brave Bird has massive recoil, Acrobatics requires no item to have any real power, and all moves weaker than that are a lot weaker. Air Slash is 75 base power, Aerial Ace is 60 base power, and Dual Wing Beat is a paltry 80 base power. Not a great deal for a contact multi-hit. If Flying types were better attackers, there would be a serious case for them to be the best type in the game, but for now, it's basically just a very solid defensive type. There are a crazy amount of Flying types in OU: Corviknight, Dragonite, Enamorus, Gliscor, Landorus, Moltres, Tornadus, and Zapdos, but only the last 2, Tornadus and Zapdos, regularly use Flying Stab when attacking. A type this lacking in offensive ability just can't be the best. The next elimination will probably surprise you, not because it's being eliminated, but because it made it this far. Poison type. Poison types have popped off in Generation 9. They have amazing defensive typing. It's only weak to Ground and Psychic, and Poison resists itself, Fighting, Grass, Bug, and best of all, Fairy. It's also super effective against Fairy. This dominant matchup is huge. Poison types are also immune to Toxic and absorb Toxic Spikes. These are very valuable traits ever since Glimmora was added, which can set Toxic Spikes just by being hit. Glimmora isn't the only great Poison type, though. We also have Iron Moth, Pacharunt, Galarian Slowking, and Galarian Wheezing in OU. Poison is arguably the best defensive type in the game. The resists, plus the Toxic Immunity and Toxic Spike Absorption, make Terra Poison a very popular choice for defensive Pokemon. The problem, just like Flying, is the offensive side. Poison just isn't that great offensively. Despite solid attacking moves like Sludge Bomb, Poison Jab, and Gunk Shot, Poison coverage barely exists. Usually only Poison types will run Poison moves. They're crazy good walls, but just not great breakers. A type with such little offensive firepower can't be the best. We now have 6 types remaining. Water, Steel, Fairy, Dark, Ground, and Ghost. All of these types are fairly potent both offensively and defensively. There are no more simple eliminations. All of the remaining calls were tough ones. That being said, the first to go is Water. Water types are great, but they don't excel at anything like every other remaining type. Water is super effective against Ground, Rock, and Fire, but not very effective against Water, Grass, and Dragon. Nothing is immune to Water outside of abilities though, which is nice. Water is definitely a decent offensive type. It's pretty fantastic defensively as well, only weak to Grass and Electric, and resisting Fire, Water, Ice, and Steel. Water is just a great type, and OU has tons of water types, namely Alomomola, Dondozo, Ogerpon Wellspring, Primarina, Hisuian Samurott, and Walking Wake. It also has some incredible moves like Scald, Flip Turn, and Hydro Pump, as well as amazing Pokemon-specific moves like Hydro Steam, Water-type Ivy Cudgel, and Steam Eruption. But there are obstacles to Water as well. Water Absorb, Dry Skin, and Storm Drain all absorb Water attacks, limiting Water's offensive power. Why did they need 3 water-absorbing abilities? I don't really know. But it makes water immunities common enough that Water is best known as a defensive type. Water coverage also isn't much of a thing, reinforcing the image of Water as a defensive type. It is a fantastic defensive type though, and Terra Water is a great choice on a lot of defensive Pokemon. I don't really have anything bad to say about Water, it's just not as crazy as the remaining types. Next up, we have to eliminate maybe the best offensive type in the game, Dark. Dark type is only resisted by Fighting, Dark, and Fairy, and nothing is immune to Dark even considering abilities. They also have an insanely good offensive move pool, most notably Knock Off, which is 97.5 base power while also removing the opponent's item. This is one of the best moves in the game, no question. On the special side, Dark Pulse has unremarkable base power, but the 20% flinch chance is pretty great. And of course, even though it's only on one Pokemon, Hisuian Samurott's Ceaseless Edge is a metagame changing force in and of itself. In addition to Hisuian Samurott, OU has Tinglu, Kingambit, and Darkrai. Not a long list, but an incredibly powerful one. Dark types only resist Ghost and Dark, and are immune to Psychic, making Dark a theoretically poor defensive typing, but that Ghost resist is massively important. Dark resists Ghost, Normal is immune to Ghost, and that's it. Nothing else resists Ghost type. And remember how I said earlier that Normal types aren't very good and none of them are in OU? Well, now you can see why Dark is such an important defensive type. Still, despite Dark's incredible offensive power and useful defensive utility, it's definitely time for it to be eliminated. Dark coverage isn't valuable in very many Pokemon. Sure, a ton of Pokemon run knockoff, but that's primarily not for coverage, but rather to remove an item, so Dark types won't get credit for that. Terra Dark is also not a popular option, used mostly on Dark types for a stab boost, or on special walls like Blissey for avoiding Psyshock, Stored Power, and Psychic Noise. The next to go is the first one that many would consider a very real candidate for the best, Steel. Steel types are amazing defensively. It resists a whopping 10 types. Itself, Normal, Flying, Rock, Bug, Grass, Psychic, Ice, and Fairy. This makes it an amazing Terra type to slap onto Pokemon that don't frequently use Terra. Steel is pretty solid offensively as well. Being super effective against Ice and Rock isn't that big of a deal, since those are generally frail Pokemon anyway, but hitting Fairy super effectively is great. It's also amazing that nothing is immune to Steel, abilities or otherwise. Despite being resisted by itself, Fire, Water, and Electric, Steel is about a middle-of-the-road offensive type, which, given how defensively amazing it is, to be average offensively is crazy. Still, those offensive limitations are why it's being cut. Steel doesn't have insanely high power moves like many other types. Iron Head and Flash Cannon are nothing to write home about, and Steel Beam removes a ton of your health. Goldengo's Make It Rain is of course absolutely insane, but only Goldengo gets it, so it's not helping Steel's case too much. Steel coverage also isn't much of a thing. There's almost always a better type to run alongside stabs. Basically, only Steel types will run Steel attacks. Steel types are so defensively useful though that you'll almost never see a team without one. The amount of resists it offers, especially to valuable types like Fairy and Ice, make it almost required, just like Flying and Ground types. I'm eliminating it simply because it isn't offensively great, but it's undeniable that Steel is one of the best types. Now we have only 3 types remaining: Fairy, Ghost, and Ground. Before I tell you which one I decided was the best, I'm going to give you the rundown on all 3. Let's start with Fairy. Fairy is the most popular pick for best type in the game, and it's not hard to see why. This type is pretty overtuned on paper and in practice. It's an incredible defensive type. Let's start there. Resisting, fighting a bug and dark is great, and it's immune to dragon. That dragon immunity is absolutely meta-defining on its own. Its only weaknesses are poison and steel, and remember what I said earlier, those are primarily defensive types, and poison and steel coverage is not common. When your only defensive weaknesses are from types that are rarely offensive Pokemon, the type is going to feel way better defensively than it should. But they made Fairy offensively crazy too. Fairy is super effective against Dragon, Fighting, and Dark, and resisted by Poison, Steel, and Fire. And here's the key thing: like Dark, nothing is immune to Fairy. No abilities will help take a Moonblast. And yeah, we've got to talk about Moonblast. They gave a ton of Fairies a 95 base power special attack, 100 accuracy that drops the opponent's special attack 30% of the time. This move, like almost all special attacks, is non-contact, and they gave it a generous 24 PP, so this is one of the most spammable moves of all time. Of the Fairies in OU, Clefable, Enamorus, Hatterene, Iron Valiant, Primarina, and Galarian Weezing, only Hatterene and Weezing don't get Moonblast. They put that broken move everywhere. Even on non-Fairy types, Fairy coverage is quite valuable. Terra Blast Fairy is seen on a few sweepers, and it's even caused some bans in the past. Fairy types won't get credit for those bans, of course, as per my criteria, but I still figured I'd mention it. Terra Fairy isn't just used offensively though, it's one of the most popular defensive Terra types, second only to Ghost. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about the Fairy type. It's a great mono type, it's great when it's paired with every other type in the game, it's just amazing. Fairy type makes almost everything it touches better. Alright, now let's go over Ground. Ground types have a pretty unremarkable matchup chart on first glance. It hits a lot of types super effectively: Poison, Rock, Fire, Steel, and Electric, but it's not very effective against Bug and Grass, and Flying, a very popular type, is fully immune. It's also weak to Water, Grass, and Ice, and only resists Poison and Rock, plus the very nice full immunity to Electric. Seems good, seems fine, but nothing crazy, until you understand how important that electric immunity is. Pivoting is insanely powerful in singles, and as I said earlier when discussing the electric type, Volt Switch is not only the most powerful pivoting move, but it also doesn't make contact. Items like the Rocky Helmet or contact punishing abilities like Flame Body, Static, and Rough Skin can be used as solid counterplay for U-turn and flip turn, but Volt Switch doesn't care. You need an electric immunity, or else every time you face a Pokemon with Volt Switch, you're probably going to lose. It's that bad. There are abilities like Lightning Rod and Volt Absorb that can also do this, but the distribution isn't much. Basically, unless you want to lose to everything with Volt Switch, you need a Ground type. Offensively, Ground types are also a lot better than they appear. They too got the Moonblast treatment, but this time it's called Earthquake. They gave Ground types a 100 base power, physical, non-contact 16 PP move. Flying types are immune, so it's not quite as spammable as Moonblast, but this move is still crazy. And unlike Moonblast, they didn't just give this to most Ground types, they gave this to every Ground type. The only fully evolved Ground type that doesn't get Earthquake is Toedscruel. This type is amazing offensively and defensively, and despite OU not having a ton of Ground types, this type has a ton of usage. Ground has the most used Pokemon in OU, Great Tusk, as well as Gliscor, Iron Treads, Landorus Therian, and Ting Lu. So every Ground type has a vital defensive role in stopping electric attacks, notably Volt Switch, and on top of that, they're all equipped with one of the best attacking moves in the game. Earthquake is generously distributed on non-Ground types as well, and it's extremely frequently used for coverage, to take advantage of all the types that Ground hits super effectively. The only bad thing to say about Ground types is that Terra Ground isn't that common. You'll see it sometimes on sweepers that want to power up their Earthquake, or Pokemon that want to be immune to Raging Bolt's Thunderclap, but it's definitely nowhere near the Terra popularity of Fairy or Ghost. Speaking of Ghost, that's the last one to discuss. Ghost is one of the best offensive types in Generation 9 singles. It's resisted only by Dark, and Normal is immune to it, but Normal types are very rare. Its list of super effective hits aren't great, hitting only itself and Psychic types super effectively, but this doesn't matter all that much. Ghost types are more than happy to punch through neutral effective types with Shadow Ball. This move is pretty great, not on the level of Earthquake or Moonblast, but Shadow Ball has a 20% chance to drop the opponent's special defense. So, over the course of the game, you'll probably get a drop, and your opponent is going to have to figure out how to deal with that Shadow Ball next turn. On the physical side, Ghosts have Poltergeist, which seems great until you realize it only works if your opponent is holding an item. With all the temporary items in Generation 9, this really isn't ideal. Ghost coverage isn't too popular, but stab Shadow Balls are so difficult to deal with that Ghost still gets a lot of credit on the offensive side. The real strength of Ghosts, though, is defensive. Ghosts are only weak to themselves and Dark types while resisting Bug and Poison and being immune to Normal and Fighting. This is amazing to Terra into, gaining 2 immunities like that out of nowhere. That Normal immunity in particular is incredibly important. Hazard stacking has become a top-tier strategy in Generation 9, and the main way to remove hazards is Rapid Spin, a normal move. Ghost types or Terra Ghost Pokemon can block Rapid Spin, the impact of which cannot be overestimated. Rarely does the person with the worst hazard situation win the game. These useful immunities, plus blocking Rapid Spin, makes Ghost the most popular Terra type. There are only 4 Ghost types in OU, Ceruledge, Dragapult, Gholdengo, and Pecharunt, but these Pokemon get a lot of usage and have a major impact on the metagame. So, which of these 3 is the best? I ultimately decided on Ground types for my number 1 pick. All of these types are amazing, but of these final 3, Ground types are the only ones that are a necessity on almost every team, and that deserves a lot of credit. I'd say Ghost is number 2, and Fairy is number 3. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. I upload lots of educational competitive Pokemon content, as well as analyses like this. Also, let me know in the comments what your favorite type is. I'm personally split between Bug and Electric. Well, I'll see you guys next time.